Hello, good afternoon. My name is Siim Aben. I'm from EY, leading advisory services, business and technology advisory. And the current topic, real-time economy, is a good combination of economy and technology. So this is the topic I plan to talk about, e-invoices and e-receipts. This presentation is mainly motivated from the surveys we recently conducted together with the Minister of Finance and Minister of Economic Affairs and Communications. And those were oriented to investigate what is the situation with e-invoices in Estonian market, in public sector, in private sector, in different segments of business. And also another survey covered the e-receipts together with the Minister of Economic Affairs. And it was oriented on how to boost the usage of e-receipts, what are the main obstacles, and what are the market situation in the receipts and who are needing the receipts in the economy. So first I will go to the e-invoices topic, which was the first survey. And maybe a little bit in the beginning of statistics. It was not very easy to enumerate how many e-invoices are in Estonian economy because nobody is calculating that. There are no surveys, no statistics about that. So we can only give some estimations and we use some expert opinions and gathered bits and pieces of information from different stakeholders, experts. And we found that most likely the total amount of invoices in economy is around 75 million. And this is the e-invoices and traditional invoices. If we are talking about the e-invoices, the situation is a little bit more complex. We don't know how much they are, but we know that 23 million invoices are actually dispatched from the large enterprises, infrastructure companies and communal services companies to banks as direct debit, so people can directly pay them. So for that part of e-invoices, there is a statistics in place, 23 million, but it's not all. We also know that 1 million about invoices are sent to public sector. Again, the number is not fully exact, but based on estimations from different operators and so on. So it can be about 1 million. And if you are talking about the e-invoices full statistics, then we can manipulate with different numbers. And here is 23% of invoices can be e-format if we are talking about the invoices, not including those large infrastructure companies and telcos invoices, but if you are talking about usual business to business. But when we go to the smaller segment of the companies, in this case, the percentage is much lower. I actually think it's probably even something like 5 to 10% in this small and medium size, actually small size companies. It would be interesting to see actually how the invoices are flowing inside of the economy between the different stakeholders. And we draw such a Sankey diagram to illustrate these flows. And we can see on the left column, we can see the source of the invoice, in the middle, the chain, or actually the intermediator. And on the right side, we can see the outcome, the format in which the invoice actually is transferred to the end user. And we can see that the majority of the invoices are produced in ERP systems, accounting systems, and they can flow either to invoice operators, or they can, I don't have a pointer here, but they can also go through email as PDF files to the end customers. And also, we have billing apps. The large companies, infrastructure companies, typically use some specialized systems for billing. And they forward the invoices also either to operators who forward them to the clients, whatever way, either as PDF or sending it to the banks. And some billing apps also transfer e-invoices directly to banks or to operators. So there are multiple ways to forward invoices from the source to the target. And we can again see the high-level statistics here. We estimate that something like 47% of the invoices are today in Estonia e-invoices. If we include those direct debit SEPA payments, and more than 50% are in traditional format. So if we are talking about the obstacles, why the companies are not more widely using e-invoices, there we actually categorized 4 main areas. One is the technology or technological obstacles, and there is some complexity of installing or implementing e-invoices in your systems, in ERP systems. It's not too complicated, but still there is some threshold people need to reach in order to make those configurations in your systems in order to start sending e-invoices. Some problems sometimes with the usability of ERP systems. The systems are getting better and better, and typically the usability is quite good, and it's not too complex. But if we think about the accountants or people in the companies who are dealing mostly with other matters, they are not techno freaks. There might be technical problems with that. And also there are some limitations related to the current e-invoicing standard, mainly used in Estonia, which is Estonian standard, not the EU standard. And the description of or the data formats and the data quality is not good enough to fully automated way to process the invoice data, and it sometimes causes problems. Another problem or obstacle is awareness. Typically, the companies, larger companies, have of course made the financial calculations that using invoices, especially in purchase side, would be beneficial. But some companies have not conducted these kind of calculations, and they probably underestimate the impact to the efficiency of accounting processes. And also the lack of skills and knowledge is about using and implementing e-invoices. The third category is financial economical. Despite the cost of e-invoices, implementing it, that starting to use operator service, it's not too high, but actually there is a perception that companies typically are not paying for services. The free service is the best one, so any fee for paying for that is too high for some companies. And all in all, it's about the motivation. If you have a small amount of invoices, then the cost is not too high to type in, to enter those into the system. So that's the main reasons. Going forward, how to promote e-invoices? If you look at the market structure, actually, we typically have in the full market the companies, the smaller amount of larger companies who typically have already decided that it's definitely beneficial to implement e-invoices, start to use them, because the processes are otherwise too time and cost consuming. And on the other side, there we have a large amount of companies which have very small amount of transactions. And we name it long tail because on the left side we have small amount of large companies, on the right side a huge amount of smaller companies where probably the motivation is rather low. And in Estonia we have currently about 130,000 economically active companies. So there are probably hundreds of thousands of companies not motivated to implement e-invoices. So on the left side, we probably, if you think about where to put the effort to start force e-invoices, then the larger companies already are using them because it's economically beneficial. On the right side, the companies are sometimes too small, too little amount of e-invoices. And so our target should be somewhere in the middle, to focus on those companies who are somewhere between the big ones and small ones, where they need to be motivated or even supported in order to implement e-invoices. So this is the main logic we have actually discussed and analyzed in our surveys. So to conclude about e-invoices, we have, to simplify, we have probably 3 ways. Some countries have implemented the hard regulation way, which means a very strict regulation to obligation to send the invoices to tax authority or some other authority for reporting on transactional level. Estonia has actually decided not to do that, and after consulting with the Estonian tax board, we understood that this is not the way we should go. Another option is the soft regulation, which is not the hardly regulated, but still the force to implement e-invoices. Actually, in the current accounting law today, even the wording allows to demand the e-invoice from the customer, but it's not publicly perceived that way, that it's the actual meaning of this regulation, but it exists there. So, but in the middle, we see probably the most efficient way, I would name it nudging or pushing the market players, the stakeholders to the direction of e-invoices by increasing awareness among accountants, accounting firms who are the main users of e-invoices. Also supporting the implementation of EU invoicing standard because of the reasons I mentioned before about the problems with the Estonian standard. And also enforcing cooperation between accountants and ERP vendors in order to find the best combination of requirements and functionality to make the e-invoices as best usable, user-friendly as possible, and to make the connecting with operators seamless, more seamless. So that's about e-invoices part. I think, I hope I'm in schedule. I have never done so small presentation, but I understood that this is the longest presentation on that conference. About the e-receipts, partly overlapping topic with e-invoices because we are still talking about the economical transactions and the information in that. Again, we did a survey for the Ministry of Communication Affairs, and in this project we actually also conducted a small user survey with our partner Rethink, who actually used a poll or the web questionnaire to understand better what is the motivation of the end user to use receipts. And what we understand that about 36% of buyers never take the receipt in the store at merchant place if it's not a refundable good because of warranty or something like that. And 20% or 19 actually, the people are always taking the receipts. Whatever matter, whatever reason, they always take it. And 64% of users actually take the receipt because they need it for the warranty. Actually, for legal perspective, it's not obligatory to have the receipt to prove the warranty because in Estonian economic environment, the merchants typically accept if you have the bank document to prove that you made a payment at that merchant. So actually the merchants are understandable and they accept that document, but still people are used to take the paper receipt just to be sure that they can return or refund the product. What else about the statistics? We know that 62% of people prefer to see the e-receipts in the bank. If there are e-receipts available on the market and people need to choose where to have access to it, is it some specific website or bank? The internet bank is the clearly preferable place because people actually are used to visit banks and or internet bank, and they don't like actually to have too many different environments where to go and where to log in. But 33% of buyers still prefer to see the e-receipts in some dedicated separate environment, for example, in merchant environment. So it's also an option. And 60% of buyers have already accessed the e-receipt solution or to the environment, but this 60% is from those 50% of people which have used the e-receipts. So all in all, from the total population, it's more likely something like 30. But those people have used the functionality of e-receipt access via the electronic channels. What about the financial awareness? Because the e-receipts, partly for the private person, it is about the financial awareness, the cost following, and so on. Then we found that 36% of people follow their costs in internet bank on the monthly level, not using about those money, rahapäevik, any kind of special functionalities, but just looking what is happening on my bank account. And 36%, the same amount of people are using more advanced methods to follow their costs, either to use it of bank financial planner solutions, or doing some Excel calculations, or using some specific apps. So 36, and 45% of buyers do not follow their expenditure at all. It means that they are spending as much they have money, and they don't have any specific financial planning behind that. So, and it's actually a little bit worrying, because we know that currently the economic situation is, of course, extraordinarily good, and all the incomes have risen, and our payroll numbers are better and better each year. But we still are now already noticing some rather high inflation rates, energy costs, and so on. So it's likely that in coming half year or year or more, the tense in the people's budget will be more problematic. And then we need to be careful how the people are following the costs. And we are thinking that if we are trying to find the motivation of why to use e-receipt, because we found that people are not very interested in those receipts, then this financial education would be something that we need to improve to help people to manage the financial costs and to be better prepared if the financial situation is not so good anymore. It's a little bit tricky picture, but if we are talking about the e-receipt ecosystem, we have a lot of players here. We have the customer, it can be a private one or corporate customer. We have the merchant, very important technical part is the POS vendor. Also, we have operators on the market and potentially e-receipt service providers. Not a lot of them today, but still. Then we need to find the solution how this ecosystem works. Because today we know that people don't care too much about the receipts. They take only because of warranty those documents. But if we would like to enforce that, we need to think about who are the main players. And we can actually think about that way, that first of all, there is, of course, the customer who needs to understand that the e-receipt is somehow a good thing to use. But if the merchant is not providing that, then he does not. There is no good solution. So we need to start this chain actually looking from probably from the operator or POS vendor side, who is looking what the merchant is wanting from them and what the customer is wanting from the merchant. So it's like a chain of dependencies, and we need to focus on that. We know that the corporate customers are in trouble actually with any financial documents, with e-invoices, but actually the e-receipt is a type of the invoice. So I think one of the priority could be to focus on those relatively small proportion of e-receipts from the total amount of receipts, because in Estonia we have estimated it's something like 400 million receipts in the economy, and businesses form only 5% of that, so something like 20 million probably. So, but this small proportion of 5% is quite important, because from the companies for accounting processes it's important. So our suggestion is to focus on the companies' receipt solutions, in order to put moving the e-receipts as an invoices between the POS systems and the ERP system. Second is to focus on the customer motivation, probably to give better financial education to them. And also we have some technical problems. We have customer identification problem, because there are solutions on the market theoretically to use credit card or debit card to identify the user, But the situation is a little bit changing. When in the past there were a smaller amount of payment service providers on the market, but the payment services are more distributed now. So there is no good single place to get the card owner personal data. So this is a technical problem needs to be resolved. How to identify the person? In Estonia, we have an ID card. It might be a good solution, but some of the merchants are working pan-Baltic or internationally, and they would like to find the solution which is universal for all countries. And the data privacy issue, we need to have a consent, because if the merchant forwards the receipt to the third party, they need to be sure that it's legible. And post-transaction standardization, we have discussed in the survey that most likely there is a needed a standard for e-receipts, and the e-invoice standard would be a good solution, because it would be not logical to have different standards for the actually economically the same transaction. And the major problem, the lack of solid business model. Today, we don't have a good comprehensive model how the market works between operators, e-receipt service providers, merchants, and other parties. So it needs to be actually found. Unfortunately, government cannot help here directly, more like making only some preconditions, but actually this is something that needs to be resolved. We have good solutions on the market today in Estonia, mTasku and some other, where the e-receipts available for end users and even for companies for parking receipts. But to have a more comprehensive system, this is something to deal with in the near future. Thank you very much. I hope it was interesting to see a brief insight into the Estonian situation.